Good morning and welcome to this webcast. Thank you for joining us for this STEMnet series. I'm your host, Jennifer Wicks, behind the scenes, helping to support the STEMnet team at the Office of the Chancellor, and want to welcome you to NIH-Funded CSU institutional training programs, grants, and research education programs. I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Dr. Frank A. Gomez, to host today's session and this entire series. And with that, Dr. Gomez, I will hand it over to you to get started.
Thank you, Jennifer, as always, for the kind introduction and a warm welcome to all of you. I hope you and all your families are healthy and safe on this Friday. It is great for you to join us today for our webcast on NIH-funded CSU institutional training grants and research education programs. This marks STEMNet's 20th webcast to the CSU community. Over the past several decades, the ethnic and racial makeup of our country's population has become increasingly diverse. But even as our nation has grown increasingly heterogeneous, the number of minorities among our biomedical research ranks has not grown proportionately. Less than 12% of the U.S. research community are members of underrepresented groups. This imbalance is limiting the promise of our biomedical enterprise for building knowledge and improving the nation's health. Beyond ensuring fairness in the scientific workforce, representation, recruiting, and retaining a diverse set of minds and approaches is vital to harnessing the complete intellectual capital of the nation. The NIH is supportive of diversifying the NIH-funded workforce, working together with institutions to develop, implement, assess, and disseminate innovative, effective approaches to research training and mentoring. These approaches involve engaging, training, and mentoring students, enhancing faculty development, and strengthening institutional research training infrastructures. Ultimately, these efforts will help to engage a more diverse field of individuals in biomedical research careers. Today's program is all about diversity, highlighting a number of these NIH-funded programs in the CSU. Before we begin, I want to remind the audience to use the open chat box on their screens to type in their questions. Our speakers, when not presenting, will make every effort to respond in real time. So let's begin. It is with great pleasure to introduce Dr. Laurie Stepanek, Program Officer from the NIH National Institutes of General Medical Sciences, who will provide an overview of NIH NIGMS programs to enhance diversity of the biomedical research workforce. Laurie, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me today. I'm a program officer in the Division of Training, Workforce Development, and Diversity at the National Institute of General Medical Sciences, which is one of NIH's 27 divisions and centers. So I'll primarily talk about what we fund, but a couple of other NIH-wide programs. So this is our website. And on it, you can find web pages on all of our programs with links to funding opportunity announcements, contact information, and a bunch of other resources. And you can also follow us now on Twitter. We support programs that foster research training and the development of a strong and diverse biomedical research workforce. And Frank really did a great job describing our concern about diversity in the workforce. You can also find the most recent version of NIH's interest in diversity that provides examples of groups that we consider underrepresented in the workforce nationally. So today I'm going to talk about some of our training programs to enhance diversity, and I'll focus mainly on the undergraduate and master's to doctorate programs. And I will also talk about research education and workforce development programs that span the career pathway. So first I'll talk about Bridges to the Baccalaureate, which is a program that I co-manage with Shakira Nelson. And the goal of this program is to develop a diverse cohort of community college students that transition to a baccalaureate degree granting institution and earn a bachelor's degree in the biomedical sciences. And these applications require partnerships between at least one institution where the associate's degree is the terminal degree in STEM, and at least one institution where the baccalaureate degree that grants bachelor's degrees in biomedical science related fields. And there can be more than one partner on each end, but there must be PIs from each institution that's involved. And these programs support students for 2 years with tuition and stipends, and usually 1 year of support's given at the community college and 1 year at the baccalaureate degree granting institution, though that can vary. All of our web pages have lists of currently active programs, so you can see a map here. And in the CSU system, San Marcos, LA, and San Francisco State currently have B2B programs. Also in all of my slides, I've tried to list the application due date and also the relevant funding opportunity announcement in red, where you can find detailed information. Our other undergraduate supporting programs are URISE and MARC, and the goal here is also to develop a diverse cohort of undergraduates who obtain baccalaureate degrees in biomedical fields. And then here the expectation is that those students will go on to matriculate into PhD or MD-PhD programs. Research-intensive institutions, so those with at least $7.5 million annually in NIH research project grants apply through MARC, and research active institutions, or those with less than $7.5 million per year in annual NIH funding, apply through URISE. And Sedella Blatch and Patrick Brown are the contacts for MARC, and Edgardo Falcone Morales and Kenny Gibbs are the contacts for URISE. Students are supported with tuition and stipends for 2 to 3 years, and we encourage that support to be in the final part of the undergraduate research training. And students are also expected to have at least 1 summer research experience at research-intensive institutions. Institutions can have only 1 MARC or URISE, and a number of California State University institutions have these programs. So if there is one at your institution and you're not involved yet, talk to the PI on the project, because we encourage these to be interdepartmental programs. Okay, so I won't talk a lot about Bridges to the Doctorate because you're going to hear about several of these programs shortly. But the goal here is to focus on, to support students who are transitioning from a master's degree to a PhD. And these require partnerships between an institution, at least one, who offers a master's degree as the terminal degree in biomedical fields, and one research-intensive institution that grants PhDs in fields relevant to the NIGMS mission. And again, we encourage strong partnerships and activities that are going to reduce the time to the PhD degree. So we don't want to see students spending 2 years in a master's and then 6 years in a PhD. We want to condense that down. And also programs should enhance the research efforts of the faculty at the master's degree granting institution. And there's a new program officer for B2D, Bob Coyne. So I wanted to conclude this section by going through some of the major themes that we ask the reviewers to look for when they're evaluating training program applications. And the first is, will the program use evidence-informed approaches? And are they providing technical, operational, and professional skills development? Secondly, are there quantifiable and measurable objectives? And are those objectives feasible given the institutional context, and if applicable, any previous program outcomes? Is there an emphasis on rigor and transparency, the responsible and safe conduct of research? Is there commitment to diversity and inclusion at all levels across the institution? So this is not only for the students to be trained, but for all students and at the faculty level. Is there a culture of safety? Will the program enhance science identity and self-efficacy? So for example, through cohort building activities and alumni engagement. Is there mentor training and oversight? Will the students or trainees be provided with information about the breadth of different career pathways in biomedical research? And will they be provided with the knowledge and skills to be able to pursue their desired career path? Is there strong institutional support for research training? So for example, are research training and mentoring activities valued as a part of promotion and tenure? Is there protected time for faculty to pursue these activities? And is there financial support? And then finally, will the proposed evaluation plan be able to determine if the program is meeting its objectives. Will they be responsive to evaluation data? And then finally, is the outcome data available to students who are interested in the program? So next I wanted to go over some of our workforce development and research education programs that span the career pathway. And the first of these is the Research Supplements to Promote Diversity. This is an NIH-wide program, and the goal is to facilitate the recruitment and training of promising scientists from diverse backgrounds. And these supplements can be given to PIs who have an active NIH research grant to support high school students and undergrads, postbacs, predocs and postdocs, investigators developing independent research careers, typically junior faculty, and established investigators who become disabled to request funds for reasonable accommodations so they can complete their project. We encourage support of individuals who don't already have access to other research education or training programs, and the length and budget can vary depending on the career stage and needs of the individuals to be supported. And especially for students at the high school and undergraduate level, more than one student can be supported per faculty research grant. And again, this is NIH-wide, so each institute has a different program contact, but you can look at the FOA to find out the contact or ask your program officer. This slide describes 3 NIGMS research education programs that use the R25 mechanism. The first is the Science Education Partnership Award, or SEPA, and it promotes interactive partnerships between researchers and teachers or educational institutions that provide classroom-based projects for pre-kindergarten through 12th graders in underserved communities, or provides informal science education with goals of both increasing workforce diversity and improving public health literacy. And all of the materials that have been developed through SEPA are available on their website. So if you're getting started in outreach or want some new ideas, you should check that out. The goal of the modules for enhancing biomedical research training is to encourage the scientific community to develop and disseminate novel training modules relevant to individuals from a broad range of scientific disciplines and career stages that are freely available. And every year there's a new topic that is advertised through a notice of special interest. Previously, it was modules to enhance data reproducibility, and the modules can be found on our clearinghouse website for people to use. And this year we supported modules for creating safe, supportive, and inclusive research environments. And then finally, the goal of IPERT is to support creative and innovative research education activities with a primary focus on integrating the core elements of skills development and structured mentoring activities. And projects can be specific for a certain career stage from undergraduate to faculty, or projects can span multiple career stages. Participation in an IPERT program must be open to the biomedical research community at a regional or national level and not limited to a single institution. The Research on Interventions program was developed in response to a recognized need for hypothesis-driven research to test training interventions for efficacy and reproducibility. And the goal is to test interventions to enhance research-oriented individuals' interest, motivation, persistence, and preparedness for careers in the biomedical research workforce, especially those individuals from groups that have been traditionally underrepresented. A variety of topics can be supported, so things like looking at interventions around networking and mentoring at critical transition points and how those are navigated, psychosocial factors that influence persistence, and there are 2 particular topics of special interest. One is understanding and addressing the impacts of structural racism and discrimination on career progression and on the entire research enterprise. And the other is to look at interventions designed to change the culture to mitigate or eliminate sexual harassment. Our program officers, Sadella and Shakira, wanted me to remind you, these are not designed to support evaluation of existing programs. These are research education applications. And they can be submitted either through the Research on Interventions FOA, which is an R01 mechanism, or NIGMS also has the R35 or Maximizing Investigators Research Award, or MIRA. And if you're not familiar with that program, I'll put a link to it in the chat. And then finally, the Support for Research Excellence, or SURE program, recently replaced SCORE. This is another NIH-wide program, and it supports investigator-initiated research while supporting research capacity building at institutions that enroll significant numbers of students from backgrounds nationally underrepresented in biomedical fields, that award bachelor's and graduate degrees or graduate degrees in biomedical sciences and receive limited NIH RPG funding. The research activities require participation by students in the collection, analysis, and reporting of data. And established faculty can apply through the through the SURE FOA PAR 21169. These are faculty who have previous experience leading independent research projects, but do not currently have an NIH award. And then early faculty who have not ever had any external research funding will apply through the SURE FIRST program. They need to identify a mentor in their field who has external research funding to be a part of their application. All right, so I wanted to conclude with a few tips from NIH program officers. So we always like to say start early and contact us to talk about your idea to make sure that it's responsive to the FOA and fits with program priorities. Read the FOA multiple times for training programs, especially. They're incredibly detailed, but everything in them is either a required element or something that is part of the review criteria. So we suggest using those review criteria as a checklist and just making sure your application addresses every single one of them. So it's a long process, and we appreciate that. The program web pages, so I've given an example here, have a lot of information, so including the FOA and contact information. If there's been a previous webinar about the program, those slides and the video recordings are available there. Lists of institutions that currently have the programs, and help with things like preparing the tables that are required for many of the applications. I like to suggest that you try and submit at least 2 days before the deadline. That way, if you or your grants office forgets to upload a letter of collaboration that you think is critical, or one of those required appendix materials, then you have time to withdraw and resubmit before the deadline. And then finally, I'll make a little advertisement for our blog post, the NIGMS feedback loop. So you can subscribe to that and get updates on any new funding opportunities or changes in policy, or changes like there's a new BioSketch format, so it will have information about things like that. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to take questions now.
Thank you, Laurie, for a very insightful presentation and a nice overview of a lot of the programs you have at NIH in your area. Here's a question that comes up quite often from faculty interested in writing proposals to NIH. What range of disciplines can be supported by NIH training grants?
Right, so we often say biomedical kind of as a shorthand, but NIH supports behavioral, clinical, and social sciences, and this will include engineering, this includes psychology. At the earlier stages of our training grants, especially, we're more flexible, so like at a community college, pretty much any program in STEM would be appropriate. If you're applying to NIGMS in particular, then as we get later in the career pathway, we look for departments or programs that are more related to our mission. So that would be basic biomedical science, that's not focused on a specific organ or disease. But for all of our programs, we really encourage them to be interdepartmental so that the students are exposed to a variety of types of research, and also so that they have a lot of options when choosing a lab so that they can find a topic that interests them.
Question, and this comes up often also. A number of us who've been writing proposals for a long time have run up against this. What kind of experience and characteristics are reviewers looking for in PIs and participating faculty for training grants?
Right. So for PIs, at least one of the PIs should have both scientific and administrative leadership experience. So we're looking for someone who has a history of running a research program and getting external funding, and uh, doing and publishing rigorous research, because we want someone with that experience, because that's what we're trying to train our students to do. We encourage multi-PI teams, and that's especially required for our Bridges programs. So we definitely would like you to round out that team with people who have experience in the science of education, administrative experience, mentoring experience, evaluation or social science expertise. So a well-rounded team is great. It helps if a PI has been, run an externally funded training program, but obviously that can't always be true, or we would never give new awards. But if there's experience running any sort of academic program or serving on or running admissions committees, those are often considered really helpful. We would like to see some of our programs sort of influence how admissions decisions are made. So anytime there's a connection there, that's great. And then as far as both the PIs and the participating faculty, experiencing mentoring students at the stage you're hoping to train, especially those from underrepresented groups, is important. We like to see required mentoring training and a commitment to diverse, supportive, and inclusive research training environments. And that's really something that should be in the bio sketches of everyone involved in the project. So in that personal statement area, that's a place to write about commitment to mentoring and training and supporting students from underrepresented groups. And I know it can be a pain to ask your faculty colleagues to edit their NIH bio sketches for this reason, but it's something that the reviewers really take seriously. And if it looks like the faculty don't know what the program's about, or they don't know what they signed up for, then that's sort of a negative for the application. People ask about external research support. So yes, we do look for that, because we want the students to be in active research lab where they'll have resources, but that support does not have to be from NIH. So that can be private or any other government support. And then finally, we look for faculty diversity, so both demographic diversity, again, multi-departmental, and from different career stages.
They may not have a lot of that both expertise and that very thick CV. Adding some of those points that you mentioned, it certainly is going to help them not only to be included in some of these proposals, but also justify to reviewers that they can actually do the work that's proposed in the proposals also. So, Laurie, I appreciate your participation, and hopefully you can stay on a little bit if there's any questions directed towards you. Big round of applause for you there, Laurie. So thank you for your presentation, and we look forward to your continued participation today. Thank you.
Thank you.
So our next speaker is Dr. Megumi Fusei from San Francisco State, and her talk is entitled Student Enrichment Opportunities in STEM at San Francisco State University. Megumi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gomez. So I am a professor of biology at San Francisco State University, and I'm also the director of the Student Enrichment Opportunities Office there. And some of the major collaborators include Drs. Reyes Guerra, Blake Riggs, Frank Bayless, and Linda Chen. What I'm going to talk to you about today is just an example of the structure of our Bridge to Doctorate grant and our plans for the future, and then two broader strategies that we consider have enhanced our success. And one is a holistic approach to our applicants, and also working with student clubs. So just to give you a sense of some of the historical background here, Dr. Frank Bayless was the professor who started the Student Enrichment Opportunities Office. His first grant was in 1992, the NIH Bridges to the Doctorate, and he has continued receiving funding for this grant up to the present. And since then, he's also had a number of other types of grants, including the NIH RISE, MAR, collaboration with a lot of other groups, to integrate administrative staff to share resources, to share what we knew about, how to do things, really made a difference in being able to continue having a lot of funding. I took over the office about 2 years ago, and so I'm going to talk to you about the Bridge to Doctorate grant that I am now the PI for. So we have been on the old mechanism, the R25, until 2021. We just started the T32 mechanism this August. So I'm going to give you an overview of what we have been doing and where we're going with it in terms of our 4-semester professional development workshops that we have for the MS student. I'll tell you a little bit about the outcomes and our plans for the future. So we break up our professional development into 4 semesters. These are 2-hour-a-week evening classes. We do them in the evenings to really ensure that all the students can participate. The first 2 semesters then are for the first-year master's students, and the second 2 semesters are for the second-year master's students. And what you'll see is that we do a little bit of overlap, but a fair bit of it is on its own. So for instance, in the first semester, incoming master's students get an introduction to responsible conduct and research, rigor and reproducibility. But one of the key elements also is we have recruiters who come in from universities across the country, and they present on their programs. And what that has really done is it's opened up the doors for our students to think beyond universities in California. And we've been lucky because they were willing to pay their way to come to talk to our programs. But I would say that now that we have virtual events, virtual recruiting has been maintained. In the second semester, then we continue with RCR and rigor, but we start working on statements of purpose and CVs. We do abstract preparation in preparation for going to conferences, and this is where we begin having some cohort building and team building with the second-year students who come in to do some of the shared experiences. In the third semester, students are all applying to PhDs. They get to revisit some of the recruiting sessions, but they also get to set up one-on-one meetings with a lot of the recruiters. They go to SACNAS or ABRCAMS, as well as more personalized conferences to meet with recruiters. And by their 4th semester, they're completing their thesis, but they're also doing interviews, and we bring in career panels of alumni from our programs, and they start to provide some peer mentorship with the first-year students, and thus you can see the overlap here between the 2 groups. So this has been a very successful mechanism for getting students into PhD programs. Just looking at data from 2004 to 2020, by 2020 we had 110 complete PhD programs successfully, just students from the Bridge to the Doctorate program, not even including some of the other funding that we have. We anticipate another 60 students completing their PhDs between 2020 and 2025, so that's over 75% success rate in this program. I think another thing that I want to share with you is this graph to the right here that was just really remarkable to me. This is a sample of all the funded students in biology, and the bars are broken down by decades. And so prior to funding, from 1980 to 90 and 1990 to 2000, the predominant student body in the master's program in biology was underrepresented, predominantly white, with a little bit of Asian and very little typical underrepresented minority groups. As we started to receive our bridge funding, we started to see an increase in the underrepresented students within the master's program. But when we include all of the master's funding that we've had and a large amount from the bridge, in the last decade, we've seen that we're beginning to get close to parity with the underrepresented groups. So not only are we successful in getting these students into PhD programs, but we're not displacing any of the original master's participants. We're just enhancing the master's programs at SF State. With the shutdown of the university with COVID, we needed to find a way to kind of maintain community and also allow students to continue some research experiences. And so Dr. Pennings, who has published work on a structure of coding learning that is team building, helped with us develop what we call SCIP, the Science Coding Immersion Program. There were two main goals: to maintain scientific community, but also to provide skills remotely. And we've sort of used the acronym SCIP to identify some of the things we were hoping to get out of this. To create a science-focused community with self-paced environment. Students would learn coding skills, and we used R and Python for this. It was community building with other peers in the field. It was an immersive learning space. It was a chance for students to practice skills. We provided some data for them to work with, and it was really interactive with small teams, and including webinars and workshops. And peers were leading these groups. They didn't have to have any coding experience of their own. They just had to be comfortable with leading groups. And then so participation was a way to keep students engaged. The structure was teams of 4 to 5 students, or even we had one faculty team. They met 2 hours per day, 4 days per week, using 2 major platforms. Slack was our messaging platform, and we had webinars once a week, and these were hosted by alumni. So we had alumni who could, who were using coding skills in various aspects of their PhD or of their careers. This was a free program that we offered. The only support we needed to find funds for were 2 students who had strong coding skills and Dr. Penning's time in the summer to answer questions. And students could ask the questions through email, but predominantly through Slack, and could talk to their team peer leaders first, or talk to our staff second. And we had over 150 participants in 2020. And similar numbers in 2021, and 50% of these students had no coding experience to begin with. It was about a 50-50 split of undergrads and master's students. And what we found was that by the end of the summer program, they had increased their level of coding confidence significantly. They started with a coding confidence of about a 1 to 2 on a scale of 1 to 5, and by the end of it, they had felt confident at a level of 3 to 4. And this was just a 6 to 8 week session one summer. And we had about the same level of confidence in our second year. And what was really nice in the first summer was that we decided to set this up about a week or so prior to actually running it. So we even had staggered start dates, and we could accommodate students who had other things going on in the summer by staggering when groups or teams met. So we now incorporate this as part of our programmatic structure, where we have the first summer has SCIP as an option for students to gain extra research experience to enhance their cohort building. And this is one of the examples that I think has really made a strong alumni base for us, and we use our alumni a lot. We have them come in to talk on many things, and I'll give you some examples in a second. So the second thing I just want to talk about with my time left is two strategies that I think have made us very successful. The first is this holistic applications concept. So we have an agreement with our grad division to really allow for waivers for students who have GPAs of less than 3.0. And this has really been successful. So the professor needs to write the waiver request, so they need to ensure that they're willing to mentor the student who has the lower GPA. But what we have found is that it is not a good indication of their intellect. There are so many other personal issues that may have contributed, including just as a first-generation student, not having a lot of advice or mentorship getting to complete their degrees. And our data from the 1990s to the 2000s, so this is hundreds of students, shows that GPA is not an indicator of success. we have found that there is no difference for master's students with undergraduate GPAs less than 3.0 or greater than 3.0 in terms of their final master's GPA, which is always greater than 3.7, with their rate of acceptance into the PhD programs, their rate of completion of the PhD, and their time to completion of the PhD. So GPA has not had an impact on this. And I'm trying to collect data now because I do believe that there's no difference on their PhD GPA as well. So as other literature has shown, we believe that letters of recommendation and research statements are much better indicators of success when choosing students. And what we feel is that this really enhances our application pool of who we take into our program. We also post a list of schools not requiring the GRE for PhDs entry because literature has shown that there are a lot of cultural biases in these tests. We are working on getting this published, so you should be able to find the data in the near future. Lastly, it's working with student clubs. So on our campus, we have the SACNAS chapter. We have a B-STEM group, which is called Black Excellence in STEM, and there are now more than one. These groups are in other universities within the Bay Area. So these students really want to give back to the community, and so they host lab tours, they host information days. They have become a source of advertising for us about our programs, and so that has again increased our applicant pool to the programs. Many of the funded students are in these groups. Many of the alumni from these clubs also end up on our admissions committee to help provide broader, viewpoints on student admissions. They host alumni panels, application workshops, and they meet with the other clubs in the Bay Area. So that includes like UCSF, Berkeley, Stanford, and it has provided not only a cohort building activity, but it makes the PhD itself a lot less scary when they meet members from the PhD institutions. So in summary, we think that a strong holistic approach to the student application is imperative. It's going to make your student population of funded students much, much stronger. We feel it's we work hard to create a strong enough community that the alumni remain with us. They come back and they do things like these career panels, and etc. They even they help work with mentoring one-on-one with our students for their PhD applications. And the SEO office has provided the glue. We call all of our funded students SEO scholars, and so although they know which funding mechanism they're under, they also appreciate that they are part of a bigger community of all funded students. And so those are the two things that I wanted to tell you about. You can reach me at my office. My email is Fuse, that's my actual name, at sfsu.edu. We have a QR code for our for our website, and we now have a Twitter account, so keep an eye out for that. Follow us, and I can answer any questions.
Wonderful, Megumi. Great talk, and certainly the points you brought out about the GPA data. It makes me think about just how many students kind of fell through the cracks because the GPA was such a pronounced aspect in terms of these students not getting in to graduate programs, and certainly the part about this social and community responsibility lens that a lot of minoritized students have, which is not broadly an aspect of students who are applying to graduate programs, and really what that brings to graduate programs, we should look at it as a very positive aspect of these students. So it's great to hear about some of those things you're doing at SF State. We have a question here. Was it difficult transitioning from the R25 to T32 mechanism with a bridge to the doctorate program?
So I would say programmatically, it was not. Really the expectations are similar in terms of your goals for how you're going to get success with the student population. What was difficult was the budgetary considerations. It is very different, and I feel that one of the struggles I had, maybe perhaps because we were on the R25 for so long, was shifting my brain in terms of deadlines for budgeting, how much, where the money could go. For instance, the tuition has shifted you could pay full tuition at the R25, and you can only pay partial tuition with the T32, and there are a lot of more constraints. So in terms of Laurie's suggestion to start early, that's the place to start early. Really start thinking about the budget early, but the programmatic things can really transition from the R25 to the T32.
And program officers, when they go back and rethink these RFAs, that they really take those types of aspects into consideration, huh?
Right.
So thank you, Megumi, for a great talk. Hopefully you can stick around and answer any questions that may come up in the chat box, and we look forward to working with you going forward, and much good work on your programs going forward. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Keith Trujillo from CSU San Marcos. He's going to speak to us today on URISE at CSU San Marcos. Keith.
Thank you, Frank. I'm delighted to be here to learn about the NIH-funded training programs at CSU campuses across the state, and to talk about our experience at CSU San Marcos with these programs in general, but in particular with our experience with the Undergraduate Research Initiative for Student Enhancement, or the URISE program. Now, the first thing I want to say is ditto to everything that Megumi and Laurie said. I'm going to talk, many of the things that I'm going to say overlap significantly with what they had to say, and so I'll emphasize those points as we go along. So first of all, I want to point out that URISE is administered by the Office for Training, Research, and Education in the Sciences at California State University, San Marcos, or OTRS. I was director of OTRS for 11 years, and I recently passed the torch to Dr. Denise Garcia, who is doing an excellent job in leading the office. And so I'm currently serving as associate director, along with my colleague, Dr. Richard Armenta. And we've got a great team, and we're able to use that team to great effect in administering these programs. So this overlaps a lot with what Laurie was talking about, and this is the organizational structure within the NIH, and particularly within the National Institute of General Medical Sciences, or NIGMS. So NIH loves its organizational structures, and so you see at the top level, the institute itself, and within that, the Division of Training, Workforce Development, and Diversity, where Laurie works. And within TWD, there's the undergraduate and predoctoral cross-disciplinary training branch, where a lot of the programs that are of relevance to the CSU sit. And so among those programs, as Laurie mentioned, are the Bridges to the Baccalaureate, which we've been fortunate to have at Cal State San Marcos, the Undergraduate Research Training Initiative for Student Enhancement, or URISE, which I'm talking about today, which we currently have, the Maximizing Access to Research Careers, or MARC program, which we used to have, but we no longer have because of changes in the structure of the programming from the NIH, the Post-Baccalaureate Research Education Program, Bridges to the Doctorate, which this blue chalk mark indicates that we have just applied for and are waiting to hear back on. Dr. Garcia led a team along with Dr. Julie Jameson in submitting Bridges to the Doctorate grant, so we got our fingers crossed over that. And there are other programs there. But as I mentioned, what I'm going to focus on today is our URISE program, and I'll throw in a little bit about some of the other programs that we've been fortunate to have at CSU San Marcos. So I just wanted to start off by providing some of the details that emphasize how these programs are so important to the CSU. So to begin with, the national goals of the URISE program are to develop a diverse pool of undergraduates who complete their baccalaureate degree and transition into and complete biomedical research-focused higher degree programs. And so the CSU, those of us who work in the CSU, are focused on undergraduate education and focused on offering the broad education to our diverse pool of undergraduates. So these fit perfectly with us. In addition, the URISE program and similar programs are limited to applications from training programs at baccalaureate granting research active institutions. And the way that they define research active institutions, it's those that receive less than $7.5 million total in costs in NIH grants per year over the past 3 years. And so this makes nearly every CSU campus eligible. I think there may be only 1 or 2 that are not eligible for the URISE program, but are eligible for some of the other programs that are aimed at those institutions that get more NIH funding. Now, Laurie pointed to the focus on the underrepresented groups as defined by the NIH. So I pulled out the clip from NIH on those groups that they focus on, that they have selected based upon historical underrepresentation. And so those that are underrepresented in the biomedical research workforce include Blacks or African Americans, Hispanics or Latinos, American Indians or Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiians and other Pacific Islanders. And so we have so many of these students at the California State University system. And again, so all of this together really makes these programs of critical importance to the CSU and allowing us to diversify the national biomedical research workforce. So as I mentioned, URISE is housed in the Office for Training, Research, and Education in the Sciences, what we call OTRES. And OTRES, I want to say, is a grant-funded center at CSUSM. It's not a state office. And so all of the funding for supporting our faculty, staff, and students comes from grants from either the NIH or other agencies. And as we focus in on the URISE, for several years, we've had the opportunity to support students through different programs, including RISE and its predecessor, the MBRS program, and the MARC program. The RISE was an R25 program, and the MARC was and continues to be a T34 program. And we're no longer eligible for the MARC program, as I mentioned. That's aimed toward institutions with higher levels of NIH funding. And so for more than 20 years, we've had the opportunity to develop students in these programs. And very recently, NIGMS changed structure and brought in the URISE program and changed the eligibility on a lot of these programs. In addition, URISE transitioned from an R25 to a T34. That's an important point because it does change how you look at the grant and how you apply for the grant in particular. And I'll offer a little bit of detail on that. So beginning in 2020, we have been supporting our students through the URISE program. Now, one thing that bothers us a little bit and has made it a little bit challenging is reduced funding because of the collapse of our RISE and MARC supported students, now funneling them into a URISE program. And so before we were able to fund students from 2 different training programs, now we're funding them through 1 training program. And so we have a fewer number of slots and therefore have fewer opportunities for the just tremendous students we have at Cal State San Marcos. So our program overlaps significantly with a lot of the things that Megumi was talking about in her program. And I'm not going to go into all of the details, and I really want to focus in here below on the foundational things that we do in this program. And so a couple of the things that are very critical and are seen across the 2 years of the training program are supervised research and presentations at national conferences each year. And so the first year we focus on conferences, national student conferences like SACNAS and ABRCAMS, and then as they enter their second year, we focus them toward conferences in their discipline. And then other things that we offer include academic support, looking down here on the left, including supplemental instruction. We send them to the STEM Center and to other student support programs for academic support. And we have student academic advising built right into our office. What we found is that before we began offering this, students would often extend their education on out, and we wouldn't be able to get them through in 2 years because they always think they need more. And we are confident, based upon our experience over the years, that we can develop them into PhD eligible and competitive within 2 years. Another very important aspect of the program at the foundation is cultural validation. So we invite in a lot of underrepresented science role models, including many of our alumni. We focus on community building, and we have a lot of curriculum built around culturally relevant content and diversity. So through this, students learn about the history of underrepresentation, and we try and provide them solutions to facing challenges associated with that. And then also, we have a lot of critical thinking that the students engage in particular through our URISE workshops, our scientific workshops, where we offer professional development and preparation for graduate studies, and through our seminars, where we bring in scientists from around the country to present on their research, and in particular, scientists from underrepresented groups. So we've been successful over the years, and I do want to point out that here at the tail end is the beginning of our URISE program. So most of this represents experience from our RISE and our MARC programs and some other programs that complement those. But through these programs, beginning in about 2002, when we graduated our first cohort, more than 325 students have gone into graduate programs from our student support programs. And our first URISE cohort will graduate in spring 2022. We've just brought in our second cohort, which started this fall. So what are the lessons learned? Well, we learned a lot of things over the years. Number one, with regard to the NIH more broadly, be nimble, because we've seen changes take place at the NIH over the years, over our more than 20 years of experience, and these changes demand flexibility. Sometimes they're frustrating, but through creativity, we found a way to get through some of those. So another very important point is that institutional support is essential. It's required by the NIH, as Laurie mentioned. And so you need to work with your campus administrators. And what we often do is try and leverage resources. So we'll support some of our activities through multiple programs that we were able to pull together enough funding in order to make these things doable. And then also leverage other types of activities being done on campus and integrate our students into those activities. The program announcement for the T34s are prescriptive and specific. Laurie mentioned developing a checklist, and that's what we've done in work through these programs. So a checklist is necessary to a successful grant because there's so many required components. And then there's lots of data required as well. And so work with your institution to collect that data and start early, just to emphasize what Laurie said in her talk. So next steps and long-term plans. So we're doing continuous adjustments all along the way to improve preparation for grad school. In fact, we did some of the things that Megumi was talking about in transitioning to virtual for advancing our students despite the difficulties of COVID. And so you can see over here on the right side of the slide, the next generation of scientific leaders. So another thing that we're doing is applying for any and all relevant funding opportunities to expand opportunities for students. Two of the grants that have been submitted just this year included Bridges to the Doctorate and the Esteemed program. And then we're doing our best to round out all our offerings in training, research, and education through OTRIS. And then finally, NIH supports preparation of students for graduate studies in the biomedical and behavioral sciences with a focus on individuals from underrepresented groups. There's multiple programs with multiple levels of targeting, either first and second year students or third and fourth year students or master's students. And so all of this aligns very well with the CSU mission. At URISE, we offer support for juniors, or excuse me, at OTRIS through URISE, we offer support for juniors and seniors. And so we transition students that have little knowledge or understanding of grad school, some have never even considered an opportunity in grad school, to grad school ready within those 2 years. And it's very exciting and gratifying to participate in preparing these future scientific leaders. And with that, here's my contact information. Feel free to send us any questions that you may have about this, and you can follow us at Twitter or Instagram or Facebook.
Thanks, Keith, for a very, very entertaining talk. Here's a question that all of us have been PIs of these large institutional grants, and you alluded to some of this as well as so did Megumi. if you can be specific, what types of institutional support have you been able to obtain from your institution to manage your grants there?
Yeah, this is a challenge, particularly within the CSU, where there are fewer resources than at larger institutions. And so what we typically aim for initially is to work very close with the administrators who are unwilling to let go of real dollars to get them to let go of things that perhaps are either low cost or no cost to them. So course releases for the directors of the program are often very much easier to get than other types of resources. And then oftentimes there's space that is available on campus. People may say that's not available, but if you can go out and identify some space that's not being used or being used inefficiently, but oftentimes that's an opportunity to find some place to house this program and through that meet the goals of administering the program, finding space for faculty, staff, and students to meet and help you achieve the goals. So start there, and then I think with success, you're then able to go for some real dollars. We're working with our president now on developing with our advancement team to bring in private dollars to support these programs.
Those at the higher levels who really believe in these programs, I'm always one that feels that there's always space somewhere, and you hit the nail on the head. It may not be used as efficiently as it can be, and there's likely always a few dollars that can be moved so that in the end there's a few dollars spent can go a long way in these programs. We've seen in our many years of leading these programs that a little bit can go a long way and to help a lot of our students and from the programmatic aspect. So thanks for a great talk, and we look forward to your participation in the remaining part of this webcast. Thanks, Keith.
Thank
Our
you.
next speaker is from Cal State Long Beach, Judy Brusslan. She's going to speak on the Bridges to the Doctorate program at her institution. Listen to the reviewers and be creative. Judy.
Hey, thank you all for this invitation. I'm really excited to be speaking at STEMnet. And I just had a Bridges to the Doctorate program funded for the first time, so I just want to talk to you about my experiences. As you guys have already heard, many aspects of the Bridges to the Doctorate. So I'm just going to start. There are two partner institutions, an MS terminal degree, which is Cal State Long Beach in our case, and a research-intensive PhD granting institution, which is UC Irvine. Our two schools are located about 20 minutes apart, even maybe 30 minutes if it's bad traffic, but we actually can work together. The program, our goal is to provide a bridge for master's students to enter research-intensive PhD programs and succeed once they're there. As you guys have heard, it's a T32 mechanism. The number of the PAR is listed right here. And as others have mentioned, and I will reiterate, this is a very extensive PAR. If you're used to writing, like I just wrote a SURE grant this year, and it was a breeze compared to this. I can't emphasize enough, you're hearing it over and over and over, start early. As soon as your semester or quarter is over, if you need to make that September 25th deadline, get moving. It involves a 25-page research training program plan. There are huge amounts of data that need to be collected, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And there's also many, many other attachments that are read and reviewed and require a lot of effort. They are the recruitment plan to enhance diversity, a training retention plan, outcomes data collection and storage plan, dissemination plan, institutional course credit agreements. So this is a big, big grant. I had a team working with me. I had Luis Motabravo at UC Irvine. I had a colleague in the Department of Biological Sciences, Deborah Frazier, who helped me with the data tables. And then I had an Associate Dean of Research, Barbara Taylor, involved in the grant. And she actually served kind of an institutional role because her salary is paid by the institution and she is going to be running some of the parts of the project. This was a way that we could do institutional support. So I just want to say this was a resubmission. The initial grant, just to make it short, I had actually been the co-PI of a RISE program that we had at Cal State Long Beach, and I was in charge of the RISE MS to PhD program starting in 2015. We had a really strong track record with 75% of our students in PhD programs. We did not carefully spend enough time writing the proposal, just to make a very sad story short, and we basically, our priority score was not fundable. But the one thing that was actually really valuable about that kind of rush submission is that we were able to get comments back. And we saw there were 4 areas that we could improve. We really need to emphasize the interaction between the 2 institutions. We needed to really shore up the data tables. We also had kind of a weak job on primary literature on best practices on diversity training. And we mentioned a near-peer mentoring program, but it wasn't defined. So I'm going to talk about how we addressed each of these and kind of help people who are writing grants as well. So first of all, just the interaction between the 2 institutions, Long Beach and Irvine. When we looked at the data, we realized that over a period of probably over the last decade, every year there were at least 3 CSULB students who are entering PhD programs at UCI. And we hadn't really mentioned that really important point. Since the writing between the first and the second submission, 2 RISE MS to PhD students matriculated to UC Irvine. We also took advantage of a lot of activities that we hadn't really included in the grant that our BUILD program was already doing with UCI. And these were field trips, summer research opportunities. There was a PrEP, which is a pre-professor program where we bring in UCI postdocs to gain teaching experience at Cal State Long Beach. And UCI was coming for recruitment that the RISE students had been involved in, but we just had not included it in our first grant. And then we also emphasized the proposed interactions, really laid them out and talked about how valuable each would be. So first of all, every semester our Bridges students attend seminars at UCI. There are also UCI faculty postdocs that speak at Long Beach State. There's a Minority Science Program Research Symposium where already this semester our Bridges students attended that by Zoom. We're planning, when COVID restrictions reduce a little bit, we're going to have campus tours into research labs, mock interviews, and to encourage research collaborations, in-house rates for UCI research facilities. As far as the incomplete data tables, what had happened our first time is we worked with our department chair to contact institutional research, and we would get things like, well, we can have that data for you in 8 weeks, or just crazy. And then when we read the resubmission, I talked to the dean and I was like, maybe he can help us. And it was amazing. Sending an email from the dean, we would get data in 2 weeks and just immediate responses. So if you are writing a grant like this, when you need to talk to institutional research, go work through your dean. And again, here my colleague Deborah Fraser helped with the tables. You really need an independent person working through all those tables. Another criticism was that there was kind of a weak understanding, of primary literature. And so to me, this was actually a true joy because I'm really a scholar deep at heart, and it was so fun for me to read about a different field besides, plant molecular biology. And so I just want to mention 3 papers that I found incredibly useful. The first, in 2020, Hofstra et al., was the Diversity Innovation Paradox in Science. In this study, they used machine learning, and they found that underrepresented groups were generating actually a higher level of scientific innovation, but their innovations were being adopted at a lower rate. Robnet et al., they looked at mentoring. This is actually mentoring between undergraduates and faculty, and they define mentoring in 3 ways. Instrumental, which would be the task-focused. Socio-emotional, that's kind of when you give someone a motivational kind of talk. And then the negative mentoring. And kind of the interesting things were that the task-focused instrumental mentoring was actually the most important for helping students increase their science identity and want to keep pursuing a research career. And also interesting in the paper was the negative mentoring. Ignoring students is actually as bad as actually like demeaning and really negative behaviors that, you know, we all would never do, but we do get really busy. And so we're using these in mentoring workshops that are part of the Bridges program. Another very useful paper shown right here is Vincent Roos and Schoon, and they looked at the nature of science identity. This paper, sorry, there's an air show going on over my house. This paper was 7th and 9th graders, and they really did a great job describing the research of science identity, which is really important in these programs. After I read all these papers, I wanted to know how my students, if they would find them interesting. So I started a diversity literature journal club in the last year of the RISE MS to PhD program. And I have to say, when students read papers like the diversity innovation paradox, they felt empowered to hear about the innovations. They were really excited that people were looking into these questions. And it was just overall a really positive experience. I was really happy to see that. Our near peer mentoring program was not defined. Again, I went to the literature. Here's a really useful paper. And we defined it in the following ways, that in the first summer, there'd be mentor training that would emphasize active listening for the first year Bridges students transitioning to their second year. There would be monthly meetings between the second year mentor and the first year mentor that would involve food and coffee to make sure there's some some incentive. And then for accountability, there needs to be students need to fill out Qualtrics after their meetings and talk about what topics they talked about. It can't only be like, social things. And then first year Bridges students will serve as mentors in their second year, and other data have shown the importance. When you give advice and you serve as a mentor, that actually helps the mentor and the mentee. Our priority score came, and I was really, really excited to open, and it was a 37, and I was really, really concerned. But we were asked to submit a one-page response to reviewers' comments, and in that, there are two things we emphasized. One was our success in being the PI or the co-PI that ran the RISE MS to PhD program and how successful it had been. And we also emphasized that in the year between the two submissions, or between actually the submission of the second, between the resubmission and when we wrote this one-page response, actually 6 of our RISE MS to PhD students had entered PhD programs. And then I was very happy almost 2 months later when the following email came: "Hi Judy, your pending application has been approved for funding at the levels of listed there, 5, 10, 10, 10, 10 for years 1 through 5. So really what I want to emphasize here to everyone, persistence, and then a little more persistence. When you're ready to give up, some more persistence. And there's a lot of good information in the comments. There's a lot of things to learn, and you need to incorporate everything as you move forward. Okay, so I got that email and I danced through the living room in total happiness and spent an evening, like maybe even drank a glass of wine. I was really great. And an hour later, I was like, oh my God, this is really happening. Or maybe the next morning. And so I really had to get on top of things because this was the end of June, and we had to have a program running by the middle of August. So I interviewed students that are accepted into MS programs. I've had a lot of, for my RISE program, I knew kind of what to look for at students who are really enthusiastic about their research and show just some determination. But again, the way they talk about their research is so important when you're interviewing students for these programs. I had to write the memorandums of understanding for the students and the mentors. I had to set up the website. I set up a career panel for October 22nd. And again, we have many, our former RISE students, I'm really excited, are going to be at that career panel, our former CSULB students. I had to wait for the notice of award, which was very frightening, but it did come through on August 1st. They are serious. When they say your training-related expenses are $8,400 per student, they are $8,400 per student. So our first year with only 5 students, we really are kind of, I had to really kind of work for free in a sense for this first year. We did set up stipends, X-Train, the 60% tuition. We've been running our Bridges to the Doctorate Career Development Community. Students have already put together IDPs. I highly recommend this online research design course. It's part of one of those NIH programs talked about by Laurie, iBiology. It's really useful. It's great. Students are already starting their responsible conduct of research training. One thing that's really important when you write these grants is to read and reread the proposal, because everything you proposed, you need to bring it to fruition. And it's easy to forget aspects of the proposal. And here I just want to say that after all the hard work, dreams can come true. So this was taken a few weeks ago. From left to right, we have Derek doing computational biology, George doing biochemistry, Catherine immunology, me, Stephanie who's looking at behavior of rhesus monkeys, and Christina who's looking at HIV regulation. So here we are. They've started their program, and so far so good. It's really wonderful to see this actually come to fruition. And 5 years, there'll be 10 students next year. We'll bring on 5 students every year. Okay, so with that, I'd like to be happy to answer any questions you guys have. Oh, I have another really important announcement. I'm sorry. Our department is hiring a tenure track lab-based bacteriologist. Please spread the word to anyone that you know. I know most of you are faculty members, but postdocs, please let us know. The position should be posted. We're hoping today the position is posted. Thank you.
Can you describe how you put together the response to reviewers?
Yeah. So when you get, as you get comments from reviewers, they'll be, they can be 10 pages long, but there'll be a grant panel summary. And so Luis actually was very helpful in this. He said, just look at the points of the panel summary. And we took each of those points, and then we had a couple of sentences where we would address each of those points really carefully. This was also really nice to have the team, Luis and Barbara and Deb and I. I wrote something, I got their edits, we discussed it. I mean, you basically have one page to really talk about how your program is really strong. And I just want to read one sentence that came from this, because we wrote, and I wasn't sure about doing this. Maybe, Laurie, if you get mad, I'm sorry. But we just said, the reviews describe many positive aspects of the CSULB, UCI B2D training program, and the priority score did not reflect the many strengths noted by reviewers. So we kind of had just a little comment, like we thought our priority, there's so many positive things, and our priority score was kind of high. So we did mention that, but we also had a whole page where we mentioned fact after fact after fact after fact to really strengthen our case. Here again, working with the team is super important. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And any questions for you. And hopefully it'll quiet down over your house too. Okay.
Thank you.
So great. Thank you. Our next speaker is Sonsoles de Lacalle from CSU Channel Islands, initiative to enhance diversity in the biomedical research workforce at Channel Islands. Sonsoles.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Frank, for inviting me to participate in this webinar. And I want to talk a little bit about this grant that we have received recently, and then share with you all lessons learned from the application and how it's going. So we didn't know about these possibilities, but working very closely with the director of our grants office was essential, because he's the one that pointed out that we could consider applying for this opportunity. So we wrote an initiative to enhance diversity in the biomedical research workforce, which is another of the NIGMS grants. It's a follow-up from some of the BUILD grants. And I'll tell you a little bit about the questions for the application and the team. So the team is multidisciplinary. Besides myself, there is a professor from biology, Hugo Tapia, and 2 from psychology, Haisan Lee and Melissa Senki. And we also have an external evaluator, who is Anthony DeBas from Academic Consulting, who is all over on the East Coast, very close to New York. So the questions that we had when we wrote this application were the following. First, we wanted to know, is it possible to motivate students to choose a career in biomedical research through specific curricular components within the constraints of a teaching-intensive institution, a PUI? So basically what we were wondering is, can we, given our constraints, given the fact that we are not a research-intensive institution, that we have very little in terms of biomedical research going on, can we still contribute to diversify the biomedical workforce, since we educate a lot of the students that could and should be going into those careers? So then the question was, if we can't do it through specific involvement in research labs, can we do it in any other way? So that was the first question. The second question was, what is the role of the faculty here? So we wonder to what extent a focused investment in training faculty from the biomedically relevant disciplines can inspire and support students in the decision to pursue careers in biomedical research. Basically, there are many students that transfer into the institution from a community college. They want to do some biomedical type of work, but they are unclear what it is, and they need the guidance that we can provide. So what do we need to do in order to provide that guidance in a way that is successful? So one of the key ideas that we are exploring is how the culture on the college campus contributes to this. And we are using as a point of reference the cultural mismatch theory of inequality. According to this theory, US institutions tend to promote mainstream independent cultural norms. People are told to be themselves, to fight for their needs, and they tend to exclude interdependent norms that are more characteristic of underrepresented groups like first-generation college students, individuals from working class backgrounds, and racial and ethnic minorities, where what the family thinks and what the family wants to do is very essential. So taking this into consideration was essential in designing our project. So this is a little bit of what this means. If we have a cultural match, we have a continuing generation of college students that tend towards independence. And for them, college is viewed as a way to distinguish oneself, gain independence, become their own name, so to speak. They are interested in expressing preferences, being unique, standing out in a crowd. They will voice opinions. They'll challenge professors and stand out in a classroom. And more importantly, they are more likely to seek out help when they need it, when they experience difficulties in classes. However, when there is a cultural mismatch, you have a whole set of first-generation college students that are, they tend towards independence instead of interdependence instead of independence, and their values reflect adjusting and responding to the needs of others. So they prefer to work closely with others, being part of a community. They are cooperative rather than competitive, etc. So now you have here two disjunctives that can happen, and in order to address this and try to find an intervention, we are designing a techniques intense summer course called the Biomedical Research Bootcamp that will introduce students to biomedical research using neuroscience concept as a common thread. So and there will be a number of activities that aim at increased sense of cultural match included in this class. And we are testing whether having something like this design in advance can contribute to reaffirm decisions to go into biomedical research. The second thing, obviously, is an intervention for faculty. And in this regards, we have a two-part faculty training program. On the one hand, we would like to, let me start from the bottom first, train our faculty in mentoring undergraduates from diverse backgrounds. So do a very specific training. And the second thing is exploring whether redesigning courses to incorporate course-based undergraduate research experiences could be like a stand-in instead of the hands-on laboratory research experience that can be offered to very few of our students. So this is, okay, sorry about that. So this is what we have going right now. We started last year. The first year we designed a number of surveys and validated them. We are in the process of finalizing that work because there was nothing that we could find that had been already published that could capture all the measures we wanted to incorporate. And we started this semester with these two faculty training programs. They are ongoing. They will be running throughout the whole semester, the two groups, and then next semester they'll switch over. So we are in the process of collecting data. Now, in the process of designing, writing, submitting, and implementing this proposal, we ran into a number of things I wanted to share. That's what I call the good, the bad, and the ugly. First is building the team. And to build a team that is going to put together the proposal is very important to identify from the get-go what is each member of the team going to get out of this. And it can be different things. Some people are in because this is a research proposal that meets the research agenda. Getting publications out of this, maybe the experience of being part of an NIH grant that can then be used as a platform to then apply for their own one. And there can be other outcomes that can be obtained from here. A couple other things will come out in a minute. The second thing is anticipating as many pitfalls as possible. One pitfall obviously is the timeline for IRB approval. This application requires IRB submission, so there is always a delay in submitting the applications. IRB has their own timelines. They usually don't work during the summer, so knowing that in advance and getting a lot of this work done in advance is essential. The second thing is negotiating release time. How much release time can be charged to the grant in order to get each member of the team at least one course release per, in the year. It would be way better if it could be one course release per semester, but sometimes budgets don't allow that much. So this has to be essential in the design of the budget within the constraints of the FOA. Weighting the relative needs to provide some support. For example, in our case, in addition to the time for us to run this study, we also need to include the funds needed for the activities that we are planning. And some of them can be very costly. For example, the summer bootcamp requires a lot of investment in research reagents and things like that. Plus, we are planning on having field trips, so we will be covering for those expenses too, and a number of other things. So anticipate as many pitfalls, which is, and in the release time is obtaining the buy-in from department chairs and from the deans as needed in advance. The third bullet point here is a comment on funding, IDC distribution, and other matters. I don't know what your campuses have, but in our campus there is percent distribution of where the IDC is going to end, and making sure that the money that goes back to the investigators was appropriately documented and available was essential. It makes a big difference, and that's one of the things that the members of the team can get out of it, is also using that money. Then building timelines and deliverables, and then understanding very well what you are getting into. In this case, our proposal is a cooperative agreement, not a grant per se, so it involves working with NIH members as part of the research team, which is, I have to say, something I hadn't done before, but is very useful also for the development of the proposal and moving it forward. So I'll be happy to answer any other questions. This is my contact information, and I'd be glad to answer.
Great. Thanks, Sonsoles, for a very, very interesting talk. We have a question here. We're all about partnering here at STEMnet. This is very, very apropos. How do you build partnerships to move these kinds of projects forward?
Giving yourself the time to talk and being very transparent in what you are trying to get out of this proposal, so people may choose to participate, being involved or not. I think that sometimes if all the expectations for the partner are not well laid out, it can lead to miscommunication, and then that doesn't contribute to building partnerships.
Fox, we hope we can answer them. So once again, thank you for participating, and good luck to you
Sure.
at Channel Islands.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Robert Vellanoweth from Cal State LA. Key features of the 25-year Bridges to the Doctorate program at Cal State LA. Robert.
Thank you, Frank. It's my pleasure to be here. So as you see on the screen, my name is Robert Vellanoweth. I'm a professor of biochemistry here at Cal State LA. I've been here since 1995, which I guess is 26 years. And that's why my next slide, let's see if I can control this. Yeah, so then I said a 26-year effort, and I guess I can't count right because it's been 25 years since we started the Bridges to the PhD grant, this Los Angeles Basin Bridges to the PhD grant. The first proposal was written by Carlos Gutierrez from our department in 95. It was funded in 96. I was the associate director at that time, and then I took it over in 99, and it's been funded continuously since then. So it's a 25-year effort. And my kind of subtitle here is Increasing Diversity in Biomedical Science, One Student at a Time. And that's really what we're doing. I mean, we know our students, we know what they need, and we help them individually. But of course, it's an overall program. So let me talk about some of the things that we've been doing that have made us successful over these past 25 years. What we target, of course, are Masters of Science students, and we focused only on two departments, biological sciences and chemistry and biochemistry, even though we do have multiple minority training programs like RISE, undergraduate RISE, graduate RISE, which is still in existence, although that's being phased out, the MARC program, the MBRS program before that, the MBS program before that, a variety of prep programs. So we've had pretty much all of the possible flavors of minority training programs that NIH offers. And we've been successful at getting those. And then, of course, using those funds and the programs that have been developed around those in order to get students into research careers, most especially in heading them into PhD programs. Now, early on, so the MBS program started here in 1972 in a grant that was written by Lloyd Ferguson, if you're familiar with him. And in those days, as long as the students graduated with a STEM degree, that seemed to be okay for NIH. A little bit later, it was like, well, NIH wanted to see them go into higher education. So even if they went to med school, that was okay. But of course, more recently, it's been realized that, well, the students who do something else aren't really involved in biomedical research. And therefore, the plan is, well, let's get everybody into a PhD to give them that license, right? So that they can start asking their own questions, with the assumption being, which is true, that people from underserved backgrounds have a different approach, have different thinking about what they might want to study, and some of the research results they'll come out with will be more beneficial to minority communities. So we target students with an interest in a research career, and so they have to know they want to go into research. We don't accept students who are thinking about maybe having a research career, maybe they want to get a PhD. They really have to have firm plans, because there's really only 1 year for them to do this, and I'll explain that in a minute. And these students typically have some sort of deficiency. I hate to use that term, but they have an insufficient preparation during their undergraduate careers. And where were those undergraduate careers? They're all over the place, mostly within the Los Angeles basin. There are 17 million people in the Los Angeles basin, so it's a huge population. The LA Unified School District has about 600,000 students. 520,000 of them are underrepresented minorities. So there's a huge pool of potential students and potential talent that we can help train here at Cal State LA. However, something happened, and for whatever reason, their GPA was a bit lower, but they had some research experience. Okay, and so that way we know that they have an interest in a research career. And we target students with GPAs about 2.8 to 3.2. Why not more than that? Because if their GPA is higher than that, then they should go straight to a PhD program. There's no sense in going through a master's. Lower than that, we've tried a number of things over the years. So this was an R25 grant. In fact, the current iteration is still an R25 grant. That's a research grant. And so we use the Bridges program, which is very small. It only had 6 students, as a way to try various things out. And if they seem to work, we can port them over into the larger graduate RISE program. And so we tried a number of things over the years, including, can we go lower than a GPA of 2.8? And again, it's individuals. It's a small number of students, and it didn't seem to work. And therefore we decided, and maybe, unfortunately we decided that we probably won't go below 2.8 in admitting students. So that's an undergraduate GPA of 2.8. Our program it partners our 2 departments with similar programs at 3 campuses: UC Irvine, UCLA, and USC. USC is very close. It's the medical campus is 2 minutes away from Cal State LA. Even if you're riding a bike, if you're driving, it probably takes 20 minutes. UCLA is a little further. It's all the way on, near the beach in Westwood. UC Irvine is considerably further away, but if it's planned appropriately, especially in the summer, then we can have students go to these places to work with their co-mentors. We have 3 coordinators, which are actually MPI, so they are program directors as well. Luis Mota Bravo at UC Irvine, who runs the outreach programs at Irvine. Tana Hassan, who runs the undergraduate research. She's a provost who runs the undergraduate research office at UCLA, and Meredith Drake-Rayton, who is a dean in the graduate school and responsible for admissions at USC. We, just like everybody else, we're looking at the new T32 version. So I just submitted the grant 2 days ago, and we'll see what happens. And by the way, if there are any reviewers out there, it looks like a lot of these proposals are coming from California. California is a huge place. There are lots of people here. We have plenty of students, so we can have multiple programs. So just please take that back to Washington, D.C. with you. So the coordinators are slightly different for the next iteration, but I'm just going to talk about what we've been doing. So let me go to the next slide. So there's basically 3 key features of our program to get the students ready. And when I said that they only have 1 year to prove themselves, that's true, because this is a 2-year master's program. They are applying for PhD programs in the fall of their 2nd year. So really, most of the 2nd year doesn't even matter for proving to an admissions committee that they're worthy, or they are prepared enough to enter a PhD program. We have so the more programs, which is the combination of all these programs at Cal State LA, has a research retreat every summer. Well, it's more like September now, at the UCLA Conference Center at Lake Arrowhead. It's a great place to go. It's in the mountains. It's really close to Los Angeles, but you really feel like you're away. So it's great for the students to get out there. And I was there recently, where there was when we were actually there at the site, and there were a group of faculty members who are on admissions committees, and I think it was UC San Diego, and it might have been Irvine. And the questions were raised to them. Well, what are you looking for? And there was basically one answer, and there was only one answer, and it was research. And so we're focusing on research. But the first thing is, I mentioned that there is a lower GPA among these students. Therefore, there are some grades at the undergraduate record, from the undergraduate record, that are a little lower than you might expect. And therefore, what we do is when we're developing the graduate program for these students, we look at their undergraduate record and we find courses. They're not going to be the same courses, but courses with similar approaches, maybe a little more physical or a little more mathematics, whatever, that can be taken for their graduate program and would show that now they can do that type of work. Okay, so each student has a slightly different program depending upon what their record looked like in specifics at the undergraduate, from their undergraduate campus. And so we provide them with that graduate coursework. A lot of it, especially in the biology and chemistry, is literature-based coursework, and so they're reading the original literature, critically evaluating it, so learning those skills that are going to be really important as functioning scientists. And then, of course, we also provide training in ethics and responsible conduct and research, both through workshops in the summer and then also in various courses throughout their graduate program. The goal of this is that they turn that record around, that they finish their graduate program with a GPA at least 3.5, and that has been the case for the past 25 years. The second component is focusing on the literature. And fellows attend a multidisciplinary journal club in the current version, which has been evaluated. And so when I say multidisciplinary, so there's only 6 students in the program, and they are in a variety of disciplines within chemistry, inorganic chemistry, physical chemistry, biochemistry, and then in biology, they could be in microbiology or in molecular biology or cancer biology, so whatever their actual research focus is in their lab, those are the types of papers they're reading for their lab, hopefully. But I bring them together in the multidisciplinary journal club, where a student will present a paper from their discipline to a group that is multidisciplinary, that maybe doesn't have all the training exactly in that field. So they have to present it in a manner that's accessible to everybody. So that's worked okay. I mean, the students get presentation skills. Of course, I'm there telling them what I don't like and what I do like about how they present. But what we've realized from evaluation is that they really need more focused direction in critically analyzing papers in their own fields. And so for the next iteration, we're hoping to get 25 students funded, because that's basically how many students we've been funding for many years now. So we do have that capacity. And we will have separate journal clubs, 6 different journal clubs in various disciplines, so that they can really focus on data, on literature analysis in their area. And so the way we're going to do this is followed after the course that I teach at the graduate level here, and I've been doing this since 96, I guess, which is we read a paper. Well, we don't read a paper. The students read a paper, and then when we come together in class, I will call on students randomly to present methods and data. And so they have to be ready for every single experiment in that paper, every figure, and it works. And it's a lot of stress for the students. And okay, that's fine, and they're kind of stressed out they're stressed out right now. I'm teaching it right now. But by the end of the term, uniformly, they're thanking me, because now they really feel they know how to do this. You have to focus on the methods, the experimental approach, and then only then can you describe the data. And they're able to do that in my class, so I really want to expand this to all the students in the Bridges program. So when they show up at a PhD school, and they're thrown into their boot camp, where they're going to read 5 papers in a week and be ready to talk about it, well, they're going to be able to do that because they've done that type of very focused analysis. And so the goal here is that, of course, students can read papers as expected for a functioning scientist, to be able to get the information out of it that they evaluate, not just read what the authors say, but what are they concluding from the data, and then you can compare to the author and see if you agree with them or not. And the nice thing is, the students always find problems, and that's great, because that means they're critically analyzing it. The next component is having a very strong seminar series. So we have In the more programs, a weekly seminar series in biomedical sciences where we're bringing people from off campus, usually from partner institutions, to present their science. The students get a chance to interact with them at a lunch meeting or other meetings with the speaker. And the plan for the next iteration is to coordinate our journal club. So the students in the journal club will be reading papers from somebody that we're going to invite to give a seminar. And that way, right after they've read the paper and critically analyzed it, then they can read their seminar, listen to their seminar, and really have more information when they go to talk to the seminar speaker. And of course, the goal there is that the students make contacts with local scientists to start their networking, especially when these people realize that our students want to get into their PhD program, they're going to be excited about bringing them in. And then finally, which is really the most important part, because the basic unit of training in the Bridges program is the research lab. That's where the training happens. And so we have lots of advisors on campus that are ready to do this. This number is actually dated. There's about 45 advisors now in the new iteration because I've expanded now to more departments. And the focus is on getting results during the first year. So even if they postpone a class to the second year, that's actually better so that they have time to get research results. Because when they go to interview in the fall, or well, the following spring, but when they go to interview, they can really talk with a lot of data about what they have found. And so then they really sound like a scientist in the interview rather than somebody who is, learning about science. And then the preference is that they will, because of that intense work in the first year, they have a manuscript ready for publication by the time they are applying for PhD programs. Now, we also set up co-mentors at the PhD partner institutions when it makes sense for the research. So if there is an instrument they need for their research here that we don't have, but somebody else has, then we will set up a relationship. But not just to go hang out in the lab and look at it, but rather the focus again is on having them make progress in their research. And of course, the goal there is that they demonstrate research accomplishments when they are at the interview. And I think, yeah, and so it's worked, right? So we have about an 85% transfer rate from our program to PhD programs. The students don't drop out. We've had about 2 or 3 that left the PhD program. Most of them stay there. About 40 PhDs have been earned so far among students who have gone through our program. And the students are well sought after. Many of our students do not go to our bridge partner institutions, even though they might get accepted there, because they're getting offers at places where, they're really now focused on the research. What do I really want to do research-wise? This campus has much better opportunities for me in my area. And therefore they go to, schools all over the country. And that's fine for us because it's a success that they're going to PhD programs. The partner institutions, of course, maybe would want more of those. So we'll keep working on that, especially through the co-mentor relationship. And we think this is a contributing factor to Cal State LA's #1 ranking in upward mobility of our graduates. That was a publication that came out a couple of years ago. And it says a couple of things about our student body, but it also says, more importantly, something about what they gain, the value added from coming to Cal State LA and coming through our programs. And the future goal, of course, is to expand our program now to 25 students and include all biomedically relevant MS programs on our campus, not just chemistry and biochemistry. Chemistry and biology. And then finally, so I am the director of this program. Michael Hayes will be the associate director if we get funded in the new Bridges to the Doctorate program. So here's some information about us. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Due to time constraints, we're gonna end here. Thank you for participating, and we look forward to hearing more about your program. So I'd like to thank everyone for all the wonderful presentations today. You did a fabulous job. Speaker contact information is provided here. For more information on any of the presentations, please contact any of them, as this could lead to a collaboration or a proposal opportunity. In addition, a link to the webcast will soon be made available on the STEMnet website. For more information on this webcast, please contact Monica Alarcon or myself. Previous webcasts can be found there. STEMnet is always looking to collaborate and write multi-campus proposals with faculty. We've been a part of about 25 of them over the past 14 months. with 15 CSU campuses. So if you have an idea and like to chat about it, please contact me. And finally, there are stark gaps in life expectancy, disease incidence, and health status among different racial and ethnic groups in the United States. The pandemic has illuminated these divides and widened them. It has been opined that the ability of our research enterprise to improve our health remains substantially compromised by the relative racial and ethnic homogeneity of our current research workforce. Diversity in scientific research benefits the workforce and society at large. Diverse teams generally outperform homogeneous teams, and in particular, those trying to solve complex problems. Researchers from diverse backgrounds are also more likely to explore topics that are overlooked, thereby broadening the scope of biomedical research. In a 2014 article in Nature, authors Richard B. Freeman and Wei Huang found that research teams with greater ethnic diversity produce higher quality science and generate academic papers that receive a more positive reception from the scientific community. In addition, a culturally diverse research teams are more likely to avoid biased outcomes in preclinical research and clinical trials, which traditionally focus mostly on white populations of European descent to the exclusion of other races and ethnicities. A 2019 study published in Cell, for example, found that 78% of individuals included in genomic studies of disease up to 2018 were of European descent. This leads me to the work of David Asai of the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. Asai coined the term peers, or persons excluded because of their ethnicity or race. The exclusion of peers from STEM has long been recognized as a problem, and those in the scientific establishment are far from being innocent bystanders. There have been recent bright spots, as shown by a near tripling since 1992 of peers entering college intending to study STEM. We can attribute this increase in part to outreach programs that engage middle and high school students in science experiences. Unfortunately, peers leave STEM at alarming numbers much higher than non-peers, with a persistence nearly the same as 30 years ago. This is bad for science, as we lose the diversity that can be a key driver of creativity and innovation. This loss of peers demonstrates our broken system that leaves out an ever-growing number of people interested in joining the scientific community. Why the poor progress? Surely it is not for lack of interest, nor for lack of effort on the part of the scientific community. Over the past 50 years, a number of student-centered interventions such as ASIC academic advising, research experiences, summer bridge programs, and remedial courses have been used to increase the numbers of peers in STEM. Too often, students leave science as fast as they arrive. Perhaps the problem lies in our looking at things through a deficit model, resulting in a fix-the-student mindset to close the equity gap. We should go beyond these student-centered activities and also develop institution-centered approaches to help change the culture of science education and our institutions of higher learning, so students and faculty feel they belong and that the system expects them to be successful. This inclusive diversity rests on scientists and faculty to help achieve. More on this at a future webcast. Lastly, to all of you, be safe and may the rest of your day be a happy and joyous one. I now turn it over to our own Jennifer Wicks for a few closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Frank. As always, thank you for hosting these really important and educational webcasts. Congratulations to you and Monica Alarcón and the STEMnet team for this 20th webcast in the series to our CSU community. So thank you very much. And thank you to all of our experts here who joined us to present their work and expertise today. Really appreciate this. Just want to share a few announcements here that Monica Alarcón has prepared for us on the slides. Feel free to take out your webcam, sorry, not your webcam, your cell phone, which has a webcam on it. But needless to say, you can click on just your phone and open up your camera on your phone, click on the QR code, and then that'll take you right to how to give us some feedback for our webcast. We really appreciate that. And on the next slide, you'll see a couple links there. One is to join our listserv for the CSU STEMnet community, also the private CSU STEMnet Facebook groups. You can literally click on those two links you see on the slide. Feel free to do so. Okay, great. And also please know that Monica is pasting in these links into the chat, so you can access those easily there. Another QR code for you to register for the STEMnet Virtual Research Cafe that you see, October 15th from 11 a.m. to 12 noon. 3 different topics, 3 excellent presenters who are going to join for that particular session as well. Please do register, and also do save the date. In November 4th, our next webcast, NSF Rapid and Eager Awards webcast. So please do register using that link. And also Monica is putting in the code there in the chat. And lastly, we just want to thank you for joining. Any information you'd like regarding STEMnet, regarding these webcasts, the recordings can be found on the STEMnet website by visiting that QR code and the link in the chat. I want to thank everyone again for this presentation today, and we look forward to seeing you in November and the cafe coming up in October. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you soon. Be well.